So it's been 4 months now since I first got my hands on the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 4, Samsung's latest foldable, flippable smartphone. In this video, I want to talk to you about some of the new experiences I've had with Samsung's foldable phone over the past 4 months, show you how it has held up from a durability standpoint, explain how it fits into my real-life day-to-day use case, and lastly find out whether or not I can personally recommend the Z Flip 4 to those of you who may be interested in getting one. So let's get started. Starting with price. At the time of this video, Samsung appears to be offering a $150 instant savings on all storage configurations and colors of this phone, so I'll leave some links down in the description if you want to check out Samsung's latest deals and trade-in incentives whenever you may be watching this video. But what is it that makes the Z Flip 4 so exciting to begin with? For me personally, the most exciting thing about this phone is that obviously it folds in half, but the even bigger takeaway up to this point is how exceptionally well this phone performs in average everyday use, considering its compact size and nature. Now, this is not to say that Galaxy Flip phones that came before this fourth iteration were bad by any means, as the original Z Flip was my favorite tech of the entire year back in 2020 despite its shortcomings, and the more recent Flip 3 was the phone that remained in my pocket for the better part of 2021 and 2022, despite, yet again, some of its lingering limitations like its inferior battery life compared to other flagship phones in the same price range. But this fourth generation Flip from Samsung has finally delivered on what we've come to expect from flagship phones now in 2023, while still managing to maintain what has made this phone so special over the years. So as you can probably guess where I'm going with this, and what I can guess you're the most curious about, the biggest and most game-changing update on this Flip 4 is the vastly improved battery life. Instead of the 4 to 4.5 hours of screen on time I've had to deal with last year's Flip 3, the Flip 4 is now getting me anywhere from 6 to 7 hours of screen time, which simply put is a 50% increase, but thankfully Samsung didn't just slap in a 50% larger battery capacity and call it a day, as that would have ruined the lightweight and compact nature of this phone, which is the primary selling point of the phone in my opinion, and I think Samsung knows this because interestingly enough, the battery capacity did not change on any of the previous Flips up to this point. So what Samsung did is they slightly increased the capacity up to 3,700 milliamp hours, put in a much more battery efficient processor, and slimmed down the hinge to give the Flip 4 a massive battery boost at the expense of just 4 grams of extra weight, which may be noticeable to some, has been negligible for me in my first 4 months of usage. What has been noticeable to me in that time though is that there was definitely a design change overall, despite these two phones looking pretty similar at a quick glance, as the Flip 4 now has flatter sides opposed to the Flip 3's more rounded sidings to probably accommodate for that larger battery. And while a more rounded design of a phone usually means a better feel in the hand, I've actually come to prefer this flatter feeling here on the Flip 4, as I feel like I have a better grip on this phone in my day-to-day use, in addition to the glossy finish on the sides giving me more grip and peace of mind, opposed to my Flip 3's matte sidings that I absolutely needed a case for since it felt slippier in the hand. And since this phone is not as wide as other conventional smartphones, I think this also plays a big role in this phone having an excellent feel in the hand regardless of it being opened or closed. But battery life improvements and overall design refinements are only part of the story here as far as upgrades made to this Flip 4, as the 6.7-inch 1080p 120Hz AMOLED display has received some refinements itself, such as a higher maximum brightness, which allows this phone's screen to be much more comfortably seen outdoors, especially compared to my Flip 3 when the sun is beaming on this phone. And interestingly enough, the minimum brightness was also improved on this Flip 4, allowing it to be less straining late at night if that sort of feature is useful to you. And if you didn't pick up on it already, the size of the bezel around the display was also trimmed down on this Flip 4, making the display overall feel a little more immersive than the predecessing Flip 3, which again is another example of Samsung maximizing every little area of this phone they possibly can without increasing the overall footprint of it. As on paper at least, the Flip 3 and 4 have the same exact thickness at 6.9 millimeters. And for a quick point of reference, the Galaxy S22 Ultra is an 8.9mm thick phone, so just goes to show really how thin this phone is. Another area which was always a pain point for me in the past on these flips that's also been improved at last is the charging speed. It just never made sense to me why Samsung was selling a $1,000 phone with only 15-watt charging up to this point, but the Flip 4's 25-watt super fast charging is now on par with the rest of Samsung's smartphone lineup and allows this phone to charge up a lot quicker in a pinch and make sure you're always topped up in no longer than an hour. Now, I could go on and on about spec sheet and bullet list improvements, but none of this matters at the end of the day if the daily user experience isn't up to par. So how has just average day-to-day use been for me on this Flip 4 over the past 4 months? To put it simply, the Flip 4 has been one of the most versatile and enjoyable experiences I've had with any smartphone up to this point in time, for all of the aforementioned reasons, of course, but also because this phone manages to pack nearly all of the flagship phone specs found in larger and bulkier phones and compress it into a device that just makes a lot of sense in average everyday use. It's the little things that really add up here, like having the ability to wrap my hand around the entire phone when I'm on the go, and when I need to stow it away, the smaller footprint in the pocket is sure to be a lot more compatible with any outfit you're wearing on any given day. Packing this guy into any bag, case, or wherever you may put your phone is a lot more seamless with its tiny square form factor, and whether you want to have your phone out on your desk like a regular phone, propped up to see or reference something easier, or closed up so that your phone isn't distracting you from what you need to be doing, there's just a million little ways this Flip 4 is a lot more practical for everyday life while still having the ability to satisfy the needs of the heaviest smartphone users out there like myself. Now, I know I keep looking back to previous flips for inspiration for this video, but after using all of these flips in my everyday life over the past few years, I realized that I always chose to sacrifice some level of core Samsung smartphone features with past flips in order to have this practical form factor with me wherever I went. But I think this Flip 4 has officially tipped the scale to the point where, on the whole, I don't feel like I'm sacrificing much to opt for and enjoy this form factor in my personal life. With that said, of course, you know and I know no product is perfect, and the Flip 4 still has some level of sacrifices that I feel need to be addressed before this phone will be a true 100% replacement for conventional smartphones. First and foremost, I don't know the reason for it missing here, but the lack of a telephoto zoom camera lens is confusing to me, as Samsung prides themselves in their strong capabilities of their 100 times zoom on their S22 Ultra, and overall have very capable zoom lenses on all of their higher-end smartphones, including even their other foldable, the Z Fold 4. These aforementioned phones also have Samsung DeX, Samsung's desktop experience, which I enjoy using on a frequent basis in my personal life, but again, for some reason on the Flip 4, it is just completely missing. The phone has the same exact processor as the aforementioned Fold 4 and has a more than sufficient 8GB of RAM to handle heavier workloads, so this is definitely a sacrifice I have to make, even though the phone is definitely capable of using this feature. And even though this phone has a gorgeous design top to bottom, an incredibly smooth hinge for very satisfying opening and closing, and a surprising amount of durability despite having a flexible display, my Flip 4 is not entirely physically sound, as I've lost one of the pegs found in the bottom corners of the phone, which perhaps is something Samsung should include replacement pieces of straight out of the box, similar to how they provide replacement tips for their S Pen with devices it comes along with. All in all, there's still certainly some areas for improvement here, but for the time being, I am calling this Flip 4 a 90% true replacement for a conventional smartphone, which to me is very impressive with, again, I cannot stress it enough, its compact, versatile, and fun to use form factor. And as far as limitations imposed on itself, the smaller 1-inch outer display leaves some room to be desired for me personally, as I still find it easier to quickly jump into the large inner display instead of fussing around with this tiny and feature-limited 1-inch screen, and I would like to see a little more functionality out of the camera system on this phone, not only because it is a pretty pricey phone, but I personally use this camera system the most out of any other smartphone I've ever used, since this phone is often always in my hand, like I mentioned earlier. So personally, personally, I'd like to see Samsung push the camera capabilities as much as they can. Now, this is not to say the cameras are bad by any means. I am super impressed with the camera quality of this phone, and it is certainly more than sufficient for average everyday users out there. But overall, I feel like we are so close to this Flip being a full-stop flagship phone slab replacement, and that to me is very exciting. But with all that considered, 4 months later at this point, is it all worth it? Can I recommend you to go out and get a Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 4? I'll leave you with this. When the original Galaxy Flip came out, I initially ignored it as I simply saw it as any other Samsung phone that just happens to fold in half, and therefore it's really not worth my time. But eventually I came around to trying it out, as I eventually do with most new technology that I can get my hands on, and as soon as I had this phone in hand, my mindset of it completely changed, and I've been hooked ever since. I said it in 2020, and it still rings true in 2023. This is one of the most fun phones to use currently on the market, and simply put, it has 90% of the features we've come to expect from flagship phones, and I am confident it can mold into anyone's life very easily given all of its features and capabilities. I no longer feel like I am sacrificing a lot to use and enjoy this form factor, and what I previously gave a Shane score of 80.5 out of 100 back in the beginning now sits at a comfortable 91 out of 100 for me with this 4th iteration Flip, and it's something that I hope people get the opportunity to try out at least once in their lifetime. But what are your thoughts on the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 4? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, then be sure to give it a thumbs up, and please consider subscribing to the Shane Symonds YouTube channel today, and check out some of my other foldable content if you're interested. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.